Tilde. I'm actually starting to get a little bit concerned that media bias might actually get some people killed. Just simple little things like complete and utter lack of due diligence is starting to have some rather big impacts. So let's have a look at the recent Boston free speech rally and how it was covered by certain media outlets in a completely ridiculously one-sided manner. First of all, looking through CNN's coverage of the entire event, I started noticing a few things. The first and most obvious was that all of their video coverage of this event, there were lots of nice big sweeping aerial photographs of the so-called counter-protesters, mingled in with a few up-close shots of them walking by, but never once did I see any sort of video footage, or indeed any sort of audio recordings, from inside the pavilion where the so-called protest was taking place. And I find their choice of language calling that event a protest to be very suspicious. Because looking through some of the videos of the speakers at that particular event, I don't see any particular protest going on. It's more of a rally than anything else. But apparently these days, any sort of public meeting anywhere has to be some sort of protest against something for some reason. So this was the first thing that I noticed about the CNN coverage of this protest, as they're naming it. No footage from the inside, no audio recordings, no interviews with people from the inside, and I found that to be really odd, because you would have thought that the due diligence of any good reporter would have been to see both sides of these things, to make reports on both sides of things. Yet all of their coverage is strangely one-sided. And reading through a lot of their articles talking about this event, you begin to notice a clear pattern that the counter-protesters, who at this point I think would be more accurately defined as protesters, but all of these people constantly reference things about white supremacy, about Nazism. And this attitude is reflected in a lot of pictures that you can see, these ones being taken from The Guardian. You can see many signs bearing anti-white supremacy and anti-Nazi slogans. So clearly some of these people think that they are here to protest white supremacists and Nazis. Which begs the question, where exactly did these people get the idea that the Free Speech Coalition, who's having a meeting in this park, are actually a bunch of racists? Well, again, I think we have to look no further than CNN, who interviewed Lucia Brooks from the Southern Poverty Law Center. And from what she tells CNN, I think it's pretty clear where exactly this narrative has come up that these people are a bunch of white supremacists, Nazis, or alt-right, or any other number of these terms which seem to all have become totally interchangeable to mean bad these days. Coming up is an audio clip from Lucia Brooks on CNN, answering a few questions around the free speech group and their supposed strategies.
Thank you. What we're strategy-wise is what we saw in Charlottesville. The coalition of different white supremacist groups, and that's what they are, white supremacist organizations who have come together to position themselves or make it look like they're victims of free speech, or they're victims of a push for democracy and diversity and inclusion. They seek out, as Arno and Tim mentioned, attention. They want to wrap themselves in the cloak of free speech so that they can continue to speak out and have people believe that whites in this country are under assault. And that is their strategy.
And that there are hundreds of people who have turned out in of what we're being told is described as a counter-protest. Is it your concern, Alicia, that this this group, as you describe, cloaking itself, you know, with the viewpoint of they're only there for free speech, that they might be looking for an opportunity to be provoked?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If they were people of goodwill, or they were good people, as the president tried to suggest last week, they would have canceled this so-called free speech rally today out of respect for the loss of life that happened in Charlottesville and all those that were injured, but they did not do that. I want to applaud the peaceful protesters that came out also exercising their free speech rights to say no and take a strong stand against hate and white supremacy.
So that's the Southern Poverty Law Center's position on the topic. A small meeting of a variety of different organizations who all hold free speech in very high regard. Well, clearly they're just using free speech as a defense to hide the fact that they are a bunch of white supremacists. And somehow their defense of free speech is supposed to stop people from criticizing the fact that they are white supremacists. Or something. Yeah. Anyway, reading through some of CNN's articles on this particular happening, and it turns out they've also talked to the ADL, or Anti-Defamation League, and they've weighed in with their opinion on the matter, which reading through it just seems like it's full of a lot of nudges and winks. You'll see what I mean when we look at it. So CNN reported, the Anti-Defamation League said the Boston rally, as planned, is not a white supremacist event. It has been organised under the auspices of the alt-right, which embraces civic nationalism rather than the alt-right, which advocates white nationalism. The alt-right, sometimes referred to as the New Right, is a loosely connected movement whose adherents generally shun white supremacist thinking, but who are in step with the alt-right in their hatred of feminists and immigrants, among others. Many within the alt-right sphere are virulently anti-Muslim. The group abhors everyone on the left and traffics in conspiracy theories. So that was CNN reporting on the ADL. However, when you go over to the ADL blog itself, you begin to get a slightly different vibe. Straight off the bat, they begin tugging at the echoes of what happened in Charlottesville, and then they immediately reference an alt-right speaker who is going to be present at this event. This is just the first such inference that they're going to make, but I'm sure you can see what I meant by nudges and winks. Oh, this event wasn't planned as a white supremacy event, but they've totally got a load of white supremacists there, nudge nudge wink wink. They then go on to talk about how the alt-right and alt-right are theoretically distinct, but that many times it's impossible to actually tell them apart. Just another little nudge wink in the direction that this is actually a white supremacist event, it's just not telling you that it is. Further to this, the ADL then goes on to state that this organisation is pitched towards libertarians, conservatives, traditionalists, classical liberals, and Trump supporters, and that it is apparently the latest effort among some right-wing types to take their ideological battles to the streets, by appealing to forms of bigotry including misogyny and Islamophobia. So apparently, according to the ADL, classical liberals are right-wing now, which seems a little bit odd given the fact that classical liberals tend to be centre-left to left. I guess this is maybe just another sign that these days anyone to the right of Karl Marx is a far-right extremist. And also, listening to a few of the speeches that were given at that event, there was nothing about misogyny or Islamophobia within. But hey, why let reality get in the way, right? So you can see the ADL here saying, well, it's not officially some alt-right white supremacist Nazi event, but everyone there has totally just aligned themselves with all of those horrible racist, misogynist, far-right things. So that was the ADL talking out of both sides of their mouth there. So I think it's pretty easy to see where this white supremacist far-right message came from. It was something created by the media. And as a result of this highly questionable, and some would say outright false, media narrative, what did we see? Thousands upon thousands of people taking to the streets to protest an event that they had no idea about, outside of what the media had told them it was. But what was actually going on inside the pavilion, at the rally that all of these protesters had shown up to? Well, honestly, listening through it, you could be forgiven for thinking that this was some sort of social justice event at times.
And let me tell you that they tried to prevent me from coming here, as you may have heard in the media. They asked me why I associated myself with all of you guys, even though they have no idea who you or we are. Do they? They don't know anything about us. And they've never asked these questions to real racists. You know, did any one of them ask the numerous people who shared the stage with Joe Biden? Let me remind you about Joe Biden. He's a guy who said Obama, which many of those people support, is the first clean, quote-unquote clean and articulate black man. He's a racist. But no one asked about that, did they? Did any one of them ask who shared the stage with Harry Reid? Let me remind you, Harry Reid's a person who claimed that Obama was tolerable to Democrats only because he's half white and suppresses his Negro accent. Right? They ever question Obama or anyone about that? Did any one of them question who shared the stage with Jimmy Carter? And let me remind everyone about this. Carter's the one who said we need ethnically pure neighborhoods. That sounds like a white supremacist to me, doesn't it? Yeah. The establishment is what's infested with racists, not us. I don't see any racists here. I see black people, I see Chinese people, I see people of all different spectrums here. Hillary Clinton stereotyped and mocked my people, Indians. You can go see the YouTube video in a very offensive manner. Just go look at it. She mocked Mahatma Gandhi, who's one of the icons of India. She's the one who has never denounced Robert Byrd. Has she? Robert Byrd is a member of the KKK, a white supremacist, and it's absolutely unacceptable that a group who lynch black people and hang them from trees is put on a statue. Is that right? Has anyone ever denounced Hillary? Has anyone asked anybody why Hillary Clinton shares a stage with them? Now I know as a person of color and as a member, to anyone seeing this, as a member of the Indian low caste untouchables. You see, you won't find a lot of Indians like me here because my parents were considered low caste. Lower caste than most of those people out there who don't even know what it means to be that. And the examples I've provided you are not cherry-picked for a few isolated cases among established politicians. Racism seems to be a way of their life, not our lives. Harry Truman, let me remind you, is a guy who said that I think one man is just as good as another man as long as he's honest, decent, and he used the N-word, or a Chinaman. Yes, the reality is black lives do matter, don't they? They do matter. Black lives do matter. And those people want to segregate that notion. We all know black lives do matter. None of us here has denied that. All lives matter, but black lives also matter. White lives matter, but we support those people who want to fight against that. We're not racist. But what is disgusting is that reporters like John Keller, who presents himself as a Democrat, as a liberal, he called me a right-wing nut job and a white supremacist. He's a nut job. He's fake news. And doesn't believe it's free speech because they want to narrow the discussion to a very limited way. Now, I will never support someone who calls black children super predators, will we?
No.
Will we support anyone who calls black people super predators?
Never, Hillary.
Who says it needs to be brought to heel? Well, that's what Hillary Clinton did. We're not confused by the reality. And let me remind everyone here in Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren supported super predator Hillary Clinton.
Yes, she did.
She did, right?
Oh, yeah.
Let's remember that. Let's remember who the real racists are. And this is coming from a person of color. And I'm here because I love this country. I believe that truth, freedom, and justice are what we all want. The establishment thrives on privilege, power, and control, right? That's what they thrive on. Our weapon is uniting against them and dropping truth. Uniting will destroy their control. I want everyone to say 3 times with me, an important word. That is why we're here. Love. 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 I want everyone to say this because I will come across to all of you over there. We'll come across to all of them. They want to come beat us, but we'll give you love, brothers and sisters. We are not one. We are one people, and we cannot let the power of darkness, which is actually power, privilege, and control, to destroy the light. Be the light, brothers and sisters, and know the truth, and know that we are here for the right reasons. We are here for love, love, love. Thank you.
That's just a few short clips there from that speech. And as you can see, the whole I'm a person of colour thing, everyone else is a racist, Black Lives Matter, you really could be forgiven for thinking that you'd just walked into some sort of social justice left-leaning event. So this is part of the reason why I find this entire thing so completely and utterly bizarre. Apparently that guy that you've just spent the last 5 minutes listening to is some sort of far-right extremist, white supremacist, woman-hating Islamophobe. This is the thing that prompted tens of thousands of people to come out and protest this. This is the thing that the representative for the Southern Poverty Law Center said shouldn't have happened out of respect for some people who got injured a week ago. It's just absolutely mind-boggling how the media report and the reality are just a million miles apart from each other. And a final point before I begin to wind things down on this topic. The main reason that freedom of speech is so damn important is so you actually know what people's positions on certain things are. If this group had done what the Southern Poverty Law Center had said that they should have done and kept their mouths shut, then how would anyone have been able to find out that these people are not the evil right-wing white supremacists that the media is painting them as? Well, the answer is, no one would ever know. We would live in a world where media decree would be what reality is. And that's a very scary place to be. A world where corporate media simply labels someone as a Nazi and then that's it. Tens of thousands of people descend upon them, shouting, screaming, chanting, and more than likely, given half the chance, resorting to violence. The very notion that the media has put out here, the idea that free speech is just somewhere, somehow a place that Nazis can be hiding from people, is an absurdity. And even worse than the very notion that we should get rid of free speech just so Nazis can't speak. Then you're in a terrible, terrible situation where no one is allowed to speak about anything. Get a label slapped on you by the media? Well, clearly that label is completely true. You're not allowed to speak about it. And how well does this pattern bode for things like the right to due process? The democratic process? The answer is not very well if this pattern of behaviour continues, because all of these things could very well be threatened and eventually eroded in the name of fighting extremists who aren't even extremists. They're just labelled as such. Entertaining as it is watching a brown-skinned son of immigrants be labelled as an anti-immigrant white supremacist, it's a very worrying sign of the future ahead.